Additional episodes are available by podcast.
Make each day a learning experience with the Academic Minute and join us as we discover cutting-edge research from colleges and universities around the world. Tune in to broaden your understanding of the past and be the first to learn how today's innovations will transform our tomorrow. From the latest breakthrough in green technology to the discovery of humanity's oldest tools, you'll find it all on the Academic Minute.
Listen every weekday afternoon during the KSJE Evening News at 5:30.
Hi, this is Milton Crea. Parents, do you know that 22% of all high school students smoke cigarettes? That's right. More than 1 out of every 5 smoke, and the numbers are about the same for both male and females. Teen smokers miss more school, have more doctor bills, perform poorer in athletics, and are more likely to use alcohol and other drugs like cocaine, marijuana, and meth. Do you want your kids to smoke? Do you know if your kids smoke? Spend time with your kids. If you don't, someone else will. This message is brought to you by the Elks National Foundation and the Elks Drug Awareness Program.
8:48. It is Monday morning here on KSJE, and it's time for our Monday Reboot segment. That is when I get to talk technology with my guest, Lewis Campbell from Cintigy Computer Systems here in Farmington. And Lewis is joining me with video and audio this morning. Always good to see and hear you. Lewis Campbell, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in and being here. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in, I should say. But there's lots to talk about on this Monday morning, and I guess the first and foremost thing would be the thing that just happened, which is NASA reporting a successful helicopter flight on another planet for the very first time.
Yeah, I think it was for like 30 seconds or something like that. They flew a little helicopter, essentially kind of a drone.
Right.
And we've talked about this before. They had a little bit of trouble when they were testing it earlier, but they've figured out the problem and they got it flying. And it's interesting to watch the video on the USA Today version of this. They show the helicopter flying, and then they show the little control room where all the people are in there, and they say, "Oh, there's a successful flight," and there's a little bit of clapping. But then when they get the altimeter readings on the screen that actually show the data for the flight, then everybody gets really, really excited and starts clapping like, okay, now this is real.
I bet.
So yeah, that was an interesting little tidbit there.
Indeed, we're showing
a drone helicopter on another planet now.
Exactly. For our video viewers, we're showing a still photo of the helicopter on the surface of the planet, and then there's another picture I want to show of, I think, from its camera looking at its shadow down on the surface of Mars. Black and white photo, not a very good photo, but that's what you have maybe there for now. And I know they're compiling more data, and certainly as the day goes on, there's going to be more and more images and probably videos released of this historic flight. But it is historic, and I think worthy of mentioning, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. If you don't understand the scale and momentous amount of work and effort and just pure brain power that went into this, I encourage you to really read up about it. It's amazing.
Right, and there's so many things to talk about of how difficult it is to fly something. It's not, we call it like a drone, but it really isn't like a drone that we would think of, because the operator really can't be controlling it in real time. It takes, 12 minutes to get commands from Earth to Mars. And so you've got to really kind of pre-program it for its flight and then let it do its thing and cross your fingers, I guess, that it's going to work, and maybe build into the electronics maybe some contingency plans if a wind gust blows up or whatever. I don't know what the weather conditions are on Mars, but I bet there's a website that would tell me. So anyway, lots to consider. So that's one big thing happening.
And that's what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
Yep.
That's part of the uniqueness.
Oh, I was just going to say that's what I was talking about with the massive amount of effort it takes. It's, if you think about it, all these space flights and things like this that NASA does, it's the ultimate in pre-planning, right? You've literally got to plan for everything because you have no real-time control.
Exactly. Very, very true. Well, let's talk about some of the other things that are posted on the Cintigy Computer Systems Facebook page over the last few hours or so. You've been posting a bunch of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think is pretty interesting is we have just recently, and this I've seen in my professional world, there was information released about a number of Microsoft Exchange Server vulnerabilities. Now, if you don't know what Exchange Server is, it is pretty much the engine that runs email for most of, it's anything that's based on Microsoft software, which is a lot of stuff out there. So for most corporate entities, Exchange is the engine that runs email.
Right.
And so a vulnerability in Exchange, that was a big deal. That came out a few weeks ago. Well, now we have a article showing that, the FBI actually has taken a very proactive stance to this, which is a first for them. They obtained a warrant allowing them basically to go into private Exchange servers and clean them up. So basically what the FBI is saying now to corporations is like, okay, we're done just warning you. We've been warning you about this stuff forever. There's a lot of private corporations that they've warned and warned and warned. We see that your site may be vulnerable, and the corporations don't clean it up. So now the FBI's got a warrant basically saying they can go up and they can go into your system and clean it up for you if you don't move. So to me, that's a pretty big deal.
No kidding.
Whether or not they actually done it is, interesting. It's not, the first time this has been done, but in the U.S. it's kind of, this is the largest scale first time it's been done. So it's pretty interesting to me. I think it's a big deal.
It is. It sounds to me like a big deal for sure. And do you think it'd be a little bit maybe more acceptable if maybe the warrant let Microsoft go in and fix these things and not the government? It just seems a little Big Brother-ish to me.
Well, I don't think I would guess that Microsoft's not willing to do it. Like Microsoft's not going to take on that kind of, understand there's a liability component to this, right? If I'm Microsoft, I'm not going to take on that liability. It's like, that's up to the customer. If they get hacked, I don't want to be blamed for their getting hacked. So really the government, as strange as it is for me to say this, if someone is going to proactively do this other than the corporation that owns the server, the government is probably the best candidate because they don't necessarily have that liability exposure, right?
Right. Very hard to sue the government, as we have seen and heard. So that makes sense. Interesting. Okay. I understand. Makes sense to me. Let me ask you a little bit about low-cost broadband internet in New York State. The governor signing a bill to allow low-cost, high-speed internet to low-income families in the Empire State. And is that something that I guess as we keep talking about maybe the internet as a utility almost, and there are other ways that low-income families have help with utility bills. Is this just one more way to do that?
Yeah, I think, well, this goes along with what we've talked about before, this ongoing debate of, public provided internet versus, private provided internet. So of course the big broadband companies, Comcast and CenturyLink and all of those, they're not excited about this because essentially what this is yet another government official saying, look, we want to allow for government provided internet, right? That's essentially what this is, which honestly the city, state, local governments can provide high-speed internet at much lower cost than the corporate providers, and they don't have a profit motive, right? They don't do this to make a profit. They do this to serve their constituencies. So this is really important for us here in Farmington because this is really a rural versus urban thing. Not that they're competing, but I mean just comparison. Urban internet is not a problem because that's a high profit margin for these companies. So it's they're all over each other trying to compete for urban internet services, but in rural areas it's tough. It's we talked before last week about the struggle to provide the bandwidth here. I think we've gotten to the point where we have the bandwidth coming in to rural towns like Farmington and the reservation. It's now, in my opinion, a matter of getting that bandwidth from the main trunks out to the customers, that last mile, the distribution part of it. And that is tough because it's not profitable for a company in rural areas. It just isn't. And they do it because mostly they're regulated to do it. So it's kind of a no-brainer that that may be something that local governments want to take on. But of course, then it provides competition to the for-profits. So they fight it vigorously. They lobby against it in state and local governments, and they write articles, and we talked about one last week. Well, this is an example of the New York governor, basically saying, okay, we're gonna push forth legislation in the legislature to actually sign legislation, because it's already been pushed forth, to allow for this kind of thing in these rural areas. So, as other people say, watch this space, stay tuned. Let's see how this goes, works out going forward.
Right, right. And showing the article from Bloomberg.com about that new law in New York State that's now been signed by the governor. But I think isn't it statewide, Lewis Campbell? I mean, not to dwell on this, but I mean, $15 a month high-speed internet for low-income families, that's got to be really helpful in a year like this, where we've had to deal with pandemics and school from home and things like that, and a lot of maybe families couldn't afford high-speed internet. Maybe now they could if it's $15 a month.
Yeah, this is, in this instance, it's statewide, and it really is kind of aimed at, helping low-income families, which again is another important thing. But I'm just saying that it goes towards that rural. Maybe I diverged a little to talk about the rural thing, but it goes towards that. And the whole idea of subsidizing internet for low-income families also goes towards the whole discussion about, like we said before, internet as a utility, right? There was an article, there was some news a while back about the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, talking about Section 230, and in talking about Section 230, he kind of alluded to treating, Facebook and some of these entities as utilities, acknowledging that these social networking sites are almost like necessities. Well, if the social networking sites are necessities enough to warrant governing them as utilities, then in my opinion, certainly the broadband underneath them
right.
is going to be warranted. So, even the Supreme Court, and it's, Clarence Thomas is arguably one of the most conservative members. Even if the Supreme Court is leaning in this direction, I think it's pretty clear that, at some point in the near to mid future, we're going to see these things regulated as utilities, and so that bill with Governor Cuomo to subsidize these things, maybe not so far-fetched. It may be something we're going to see more of in the future.
Very true. We shall see, but it seems to be moving in that direction in a lot of different areas. You're right about that.
Yep.
So, Lewis, thank you for joining me this week. It's always great to talk to you. We are out of time.
Thank you very much. Have a great week, everyone.
All right, you too. Thank you. That's Lewis Campbell from Cintigy Computer Systems, my guest on our Monday Reboot segment right here on KSJE Farmington. Thank you for joining me, everyone. Have a great Monday. Back with you tomorrow morning, a little after 8 a.m.